Committee, November 27th, 2023 meeting of the Recreation Education Committee will now come to order. Will clerk please will call the roll?
Mr. Baines. Here. Mr. Baines is present. Mr. Hebert. Here. Mr. Hebert is present. Mr. McCabe. Mr. McCabe is present. Ms. Vasquez-Simmons. Vasquez-Simmons is present, and Chairman Alcott.
Present.
Chairman Alcott is.
Is there anyone signed up for public forum?
There is not.
Chairman, I'd like to declare my interest, my elder daughter as a trustee of the library system.
Excuse me. I would like to introduce Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer of Monroe County, who is here to present the 2024 proposed Monroe County budget as it pertains to the Recreation Education Committee. We will have a question and answer period following the presentation. Franklin?
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the realm of recreation and education within the 2024 proposed budget includes $3.2 million of additional appropriations for Rec and Ed, which has been an increase of about 1.4% when compared to the 2023 adopted budget. $3.2 million is a lot of money, but as a segment of the overall county budget, Rec and Ed is a minor contributor to the overall budgetary increase in the county budget of $119.9 million. Within Rec and Ed, our largest area is Department of Parks, at least in terms of staff, right? Parks appropriations are increasing less than $1.4 million. It is a 5.4% increase from the 23 adopted budget. Payroll and benefits account for the bulk of this increase, up a combined $1.1 million after adding in 1.5 FTEs to park staff and accounting for the higher retention bonuses in the budget. Between the parks divisions, there's some shifting of personnel and a number of budgetary changes. Looking at the slide, although Parks Administration is adding 4.5 FTEs, appropriations are actually coming down compared to the 23 adopted budget. But that is due significantly, that is due to a significant reduction in debt service for this division. It's about $375,000 lower than in 2023. Also due in part to a $193,000 reduction in planned cash capital funding of their projects as they continue to find that right balance between budgeting for capital improvements versus budgeting for what we would normally call ongoing repairs and maintenance. Appropriations for the division operations and support services are increasing almost $623,000. And we saw some of that coming earlier this summer when we were preparing the third quarter budget reappropriation referral. In that referral, we added $465,000 to support the higher expense of our temp help and overtime in this division. So that is kind of carrying through in the 24 budget requests. Within the division of Seneca Park Zoo, additional appropriations here are the result of an increase of 4.5 FTEs, a $670,000 increase in debt service. And that higher debt service, I'll note, is partially supported by an increase in our allocation of hotel tax support, $150,000. The division for horticulture appropriations are proposed to be $215,000 lower. They actually shifted out 5 FTEs to other parks divisions. And lastly, while appropriations are growing for the county golf courses, this is an area where you need to spend money to make money. For the third consecutive budget, our golf courses are anticipated to generate a modest profit, offsetting the need for tax support in their other divisions. If I can turn your attention to Monroe Community College, the cost of supporting higher education includes, of course, our sponsor contribution to MCC, the debt service we pay. We own their buildings in trust for the college. And it also includes what we pay other community colleges when our student residents choose to attend another county's community college. As agreed to by the legislature earlier this summer, our sponsor contribution to MCC is increasing by $400,000, and debt service is nominally higher for 2024. The other notable change I'll comment on is that we have a new parking agreement for MCC students. At the request of MCC, we switched from a more complicated revenue sharing formula based on parking passes, fines, etc. We switched to a fixed fee-based arrangement based on the number of enrolled FTEs at the college. It's true, mathematically, the new arrangement can result in lower county revenue, but the reality we see is that our parking revenue budgets have historically been overstated anyway. And an FTE-based revenue formula adds much more predictability and stability, which budget directors love. Looking at our library system, both the Monroe County Library System and Rochester, we see a modest 1.4% increase in appropriations, slight shift from the countywide system to central services. Net county support for the library system comes out a little higher as well, and that is comprised of our payment to the city of Rochester for central services, our library debt service, and the county's cash capital support for the library information systems. Another significant area of Rec and Ed is our authorized agencies. This is our funding for our principal tourism entities, the arts and cultural and education agencies, nonprofit agencies across the county. These entities are supported to a large extent, almost all of it, by our hotel occupancy taxes collected, and to a smaller extent, real property taxes. The most notable change in support for arts, culture, and education for the proposed budget include an increase of our support for Visit Rochester, which in turn works to increase local tourism. An increase in support for the existing agencies that we call out in our budget book. By and large, it's rounded to a 25% increase compared to prior allocations. And the other notable change is adding support for what we're calling internally as a planning document for bringing back a Monroe County fair, not the actual fair, but how to plan to bring it back. What should it look like? Should it have kids rise, animal exhibits? Should it have live entertainment? And of course, the location. It also adds supports for Lollipop Farm, and it adds supports for the Jewish Community Center. Mr. Chairman, really, that's the extent of my comments. Be happy to answer questions.
Great. At this time, I'll open the floor to any committee members who will have any questions regarding the recreation education portion of the budget. Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As the other committees have requested, through Mr. Chairman and administration, could you give us a breakdown of the mandated for?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'll follow up. I believe we provided these answers before recent meetings for these.
True. Thank you for that. Through Mr. Chairman, is there any general fund balance being applied to the park department budget?
Mr. Chairman, any entity, whether it's MCC, parks, authorized agencies, the answer is no general fund appropriated fund balance to support any of the areas pertaining to this committee.
Thank you. Does the 2024 proposed budget allocate any cash capital for county park projects, and if so, why are we using cash capital for you, Mr. Chairman?
It does, Mr. Chairman. Our Parks Department does have several cash-funded capital projects. The 24 budget, the value of those cash-funded projects amounts to $1.1 million. Each of those projects has been historically in each of the prior year capital improvement programs. And to a great extent, each year funded consistent dollar amounts. Financially, for parks projects, most park projects are around a 15-year bond payment schedule. The debt service on annual recurring projects exceeds what we would otherwise budgeted in terms of cash, around the 10th or 11th year, I believe. There are several projects within parks that are already, the debt service is exceeding what they are seeking to budget. So we really do this to avoid borrowing issuance costs and interest costs for those projects that recur every single year.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, can you provide an update on the Seneca Park Zoo renovation? Is the funding in this year's budget? And we start with those two.
Well, quickly, I will comment that funding for Seneca Park Zoo renovations is accounted for in a capital fund. But for any specific updates, I would turn to our Parks Management team, either to respond tonight or formulate a response.
Through the chair, Pat Meredith here, from Parks Department. The project, was put on a hard stop once the bid came in over budget and only having one bidder. The intent is to redesign and rescope a project that will fall within the current allocated funds. There is not a revised schedule yet as to when RFP or the bid process or redesign.
Thank you. And through Mr. Chairman, is the funding in the budget? Is the funding that this legislative body approved in the 2024 budget?
Mr. Chairman, the capital budgets for the Seneca Park Zoo renovations were in prior year capital improvement programs ranging from, I want to say, 2017 through 2023. The 24 CIP does not have any specific dollars for the zoo renovation, but unlike the operating budget, dollars authorized for capital projects automatically carry forward from year to year. There is no expiration of appropriations at the end of the calendar year the way an operating budget.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, have we received this promised state and Zoo Society funding? Are they, and how are they planned to be received? They haven't been.
Mr. Chairman, I'm told we do have the grant application from Empire State Development prepared and submitted. Prepared to be submitted. When it comes to the Zoo Society, we'll have to confer with Zoo Society management on their fundraising efforts.
Thank you. I'm going to move on from that. Through the chair, can you provide an update on each of planned and approved park revitalization projects? Where do they stand in their timeline?
Mr. Chairman, I will note we do that on an annual basis, and my staff is in the beginning stages of developing the capital budget status report that will be submitted to the legislature prior to March 31st of 24.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, on page 229 of the budget book. Why weren't the paving projects from phase one? With $7.2 million in system-wide improvements listed as major account?
Through the chair, the vast majority of the paving projects were completed in the fiscal year 2022. Thus would have been in previous years' accomplishments before this honorable body.
Very good. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Why wasn't the completed phase two with $9.4 million worth of system-wide improvements listed as the 2023 major account?
Through the chair, the 7.2 and the 9.4 million, phase one and phase two, that's being referenced is kind of combined in our major accomplishments under the $16 million system-wide renovation. So it is, there are that secondary phase two 9.4 is within and on page 229, the first bullet.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't connect those. Through Mr. Chairman, on page 246, the rec and ed programs show going from 446K down to about 188K. Why is that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, on page 246, Rec and Ed programs.
Yes, sir.
That county support is $188,000. Number of things going on in Rec and Ed. This particular division of park has shifted out 4 FTEs to other parks divisions. They are also significantly, although the dollar amounts are not that significant, lower chargebacks from information services. And I will note that the revenues of recreation fees is almost cut in half, and that's really due to lower field permit fees. So,
I'm sorry, lower.
field permit fees.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, how much revenue do the golf courses generate yearly?
Well, we have a history, Mr. Chairman, of golf course revenues. On page 248, we are projecting for next year's proposed budget. Revenues will be in excess of $3.1 million with a slight return, therefore, to the county, a net county support return. The actuals for 23 are yet to be determined, as the golf courses closed just last month. But I'm sure we can follow up and provide some historical context.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Through you, Mr. Chairman, regarding the parks agreement with the city of Rochester 61, which was, I believe, was amended in 1975. Is there a review or renewal date due, and if so, when?
For the chair, the renewal discussion will happen in the year 2030. We're looking that up, but we're fairly confident that's the date. The year, yeah.
Okay. 5 years seems like a long time to go between discussions. Yes, I was 17 when you last did it. I had hair then. Through you, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Does the city of Rochester reimburse the county for maintenance and special events that are held in conjunction with the city?
There's no city reimbursement, Mr. Chairman.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, does the city of Rochester contribute to the operation or the emissions for the zoo under the operating agreement from 1967?
Mr. Chairman, the zoo is really on the purview of Monroe County and through our contracted entities, Zoo Society and SSA Group.
Okay. Regarding the Mr. Chairman, regarding the veterans memorials at Highland Park, does the county assist with the maintenance of the memorials, or do specific veteran organizations?
Through the chair, we do take care of some maintenance, primarily the lawn mowing, weed whipping in the general vicinities, but we rely on those volunteer organizations to perform some maintenance duties there at these memorials.
I'm sorry, you tailing off, I can't hear you. Again. Probably my hearing aids, not your voice.
We do rely on some of those volunteer organizations to perform some maintenance duties, but the Parks Department does provide the lawn mowing and weed whipping, general grounds maintenance in the surrounding areas.
Thank you, and just a comment through you, Mr. Chairman, the administration, I'm a Vietnam veteran as a chairman, and we're getting a little old to be doing a lot of that stuff, and I'm just encouraging you to think about need that you're gonna have to pick it up. I mean, I'm not sure you have any World War II guys left that can do anything. Pretty damn soon, you know, I'm gonna have 5 replacement joints, I'm getting where I can do very well, so, as are most of my colleagues, so just a point for the future. Through the chair, just out of curiosity, how much of the golf budget is handled by the vendor? Then we by the company.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure what the legislator means by the vendor. Mr. Chairman, it's commonly known, Jack Tyndale Inc. used to run our golf courses. That contract, was terminated in 2016, and Monroe County Parks took over full operations of the golf courses, I think in 2018. There was 2 years of an interim contract with a different entity.
Thank you. And I think you're correct. I think I'm just wrong in asking the question. Through you, Mr. Chairman, however, once renovations to the Roebuck Center and Ontario Beach Park are completed, do you foresee any rate increases to help pay for those improvements?
Through the chair, we do not. The vast majority of those projects were funded with grant funds.
Thank you. Through the chair, does the county apply for additional park grants through the Office of Parks, Recreation, or Historic Preservation for improvements to purchases of new snowmobile trails?
Through the chair, we do, and that's an annual basis.
Thank you. 3 left. Through you, Mr. Chairman. What's the status of the Children's Pavilion, and when will construction begin?
Through the chair, we are currently still in the design phase for the project, reviewing code impacts with the historical building, as for a timeline for construction. As soon as we're done with design development, get bid ready documents, we'll be out to bid. In the most aggressive schedule, we're looking into the later part of 2024.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. Is this, as I recall, that would make this behind schedule, is that true? When we originally passed the allocation, I believe you gave us a schedule that we'd already be well into the build phase.
Through the chair, at first the onboarding process for, the distribution of an RFP takes that process to move through. But then during design development, we did encounter some code implications with regard to the historical nature of the building. That code related code issues did take time to sort through with our engineering firm and Monroe County Codes, moving through the variance process. and happy to report that we have been approved for that variance, and now with code issues behind us, we do seek to push right through and move forward with design development at rapid pace.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman, does the county appropriate funds for the ice rinks at Ontario Beach Park?
Through the chair, the ice rink at Ontario Beach Park is a synthetic ice rink. Thus, the staffing component of installing it, disassembling it year over year, and preparing the area for general patron use. So the answer is yes, but staff time.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chairman, is it supervised or open skating?
Through the chair, it is open skating.
Thank you. Last question through the chair, how many events were held in the Highland Bowl in 2023? And how many would you project for 24?
Through the chair, we'll have to get back to you on a specific number. Shakespeare in the Park definitely occurs. The frequency of those is not something I know off the top of my head.
Thank you, that's perfect. I yield the ball.
Legislator McCabe. I have some appropriation questions through the chair on page 599. The salaries line item is increasing from over 450,000 to about 640,000. Explain.
Mr. Chairman, there is a net increase in Parks Administration, 3 FTEs shifted from other divisions. In addition, other than that, really the increase is related to contractually obligated pay and step increases.
And also on that page, through the chair, the temporary help line is increasing from 30 to 55,000.
The Parks Administration, Mr. Chairman, did add a part-time position. And that accounts for the entire increase on that line.
And also on that page, the gas line item increasing from 7,500 to 10,000. Is that just the cost of gas increasing?
This is more utilization based, Mr. Chairman, not necessarily the cost of gas.
And then on page 600, the transportation equipment was $130,000 this year, and it's going to zero.
The transportation equipment, Mr. Chairman, is, back in 23, we amended the budget. There was a purchase of, vehicles, and the funding came from New York State pursuant to our shared services agreement with the other municipalities. You know, Mr. Chairman, I do want to make one other comment about, oh, my mistake, Mr. Chairman. I don't have another comment on the utilities. The transportation equipment was purchased through a grant, our shared services revenue from New York State. One-time item.
And then on page 601 through the chair, the temporary help here is going down.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. Actually, 6 part-time positions were transferred to other divisions.
Good. And then commercial services on that same page is increasing from 45 to 58.
This really, Mr. Chairman, handles the park's refuse pickup, walk-off floor mats. Some of this increase, however, if memory serves me correctly, we actually amended the parks budget in this particular division down in 23, as they had other funding needs. So, if you look at the 22 actuals, it's almost $58,000. They probably had other, I know they had other expense needs in 23. So they probably chose to do without something so that they could shift this particular line to support other needs.
And also on that page, or on page 602, excuse me, the fleet maintenance is decreasing from 530,000 down to 490.
Mr. Chairman, this really comes as a allocation chargeback from our fleet maintenance division. It's primarily driven by the fleet work order system. So there is a little bit of a lag.
Thank you. And then on page 603, the temporary help is increasing from $80,000 in 2023 up to 90,000, but the amended budget was 160,000. What was the reason for this increase in the proposed number, and do you foresee a similar coming, and it's with increasing the amended budget this year?
So I'm gonna let these guys jump in, if I say anything wrong, or if they want to tag team, but the use of parks by our community residents has really taken off since the COVID pandemic. During 2023, Parks Department did utilize additional seasonal staff, so we did amend their budget to add dollars, and this was done in the third quarter budget reappropriation. But we added money specifically to park support services. Going into 24, there is one less part-time position in the budget. And I've had at least 2 conversations with management team, not at this table, to get a better handle on their use of seasonal staff.
And then also on that page, the overtime is increasing from about 11,000 up to about 40,000.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and a lot of this really relates to our building trade staff that Parks has. The work is out there, and I think there's only like 4 tradesmen on.
And also on that page, the retirement's going up. I assume that's just the increase from the pension system.
It is from the pension system, and we still are in the alternate stabilization contribution program. And our stabilization rates are lower than what the published contribution rate for the other municipalities is, so we have to make a they call it a graded payment. So we actually pay our rate plus a little extra.
Thank you. And then on page 2, the chair, on page 604, the taxes and assessments are decreasing from about 125,000 to 100,000.
Mr. Chairman, just trying to get that particular budget line more realistic to where the taxes have been. You can see on the same page, the calendar year 22 taxes were just under $98,000. So I'm thinking the 100 grand is probably more reasonable than the current budget of 125.
And then on that same page, the groceries going from 265,000 to 290,000, excuse me. I'm assuming the reason is inflation, and is this line item for purchasing food to be sold in the parks?
Sorry, are we on page 604?
Yes, according to my notes, which I may be wrong.
So, okay, so I think it's page 605, but it's still.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Groceries are really it's food for the animals.
Oh, okay.
The 23 is quite higher, right? $350,000. The adopted budget, I wrote myself a note. The adopted budget for 23 was 265.
Yep.
And I know this was part of the third quarter budget reappropriation that passed back in September, which added money to this line. So the budget increase to 290 versus what was adopted, 265, is very much needed. I hope there's not a continued run on the price of food that we're looking to transfer more money. So.
Thank you. And then on page 606, through the chair, the interest on the bonds is decreasing from about $1 million down to about 840,000 in 2024.
We pay, Mr. Chairman, a fixed coupon on our bonds. Those are bid by the purchaser. Most of our bonds are sold at a 5% coupon. When you get out in the later years, it's a little less, 4.5 and 4. Most parks projects, however, are probably a 15-year payback. So really it's only years 11 through 15 that probably carry that 4.5 or 4.25% coupon. As they issue debt, really primarily the drivers at 5% coupon. So interest rates change as we accumulate more debt and pay off.
And on that same page, personnel services is decreasing from about 1.5 down to 1.3.
A lot of that, Mr. Chairman, is a shift of 4 FTEs out of horticulture into different divisions. They also are shifting one part-time position to another division. So that transfer out of staff is the primary reason you see the budget go down.
And then also on that page, through the chair, the price, the gas is decreasing from 55 down to 33.
You know, I should have commented and I didn't, I started to. Our budget lines for utilities, gas and electric, really, our consultant helps us out with this, Fluent Energy. So this is their projection, and their best estimate of where these costs are headed to the 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Just a couple more questions. Thank you for being patient with me. On page 608, there's many line items that reduced down to 0. Is there an explanation on the reason?
I'm gonna have the Parks Management team tag team with me. This is Rec and Ed is a division that transferred out 4 FTEs, all of their FTEs. And there's a reduction in seasonal lifeguards, but a lot of the work in this division is being shifted to other areas.
Okay, on page 611, the equipment is increasing from 3,000 to 40,000. What are we looking to buy?
This actually, Mr. Chairman, this is to better maintain our golf courses. I do want to note, however, the budget is increasing to $40,000, but if you look a couple rows higher, our construction supplies, the 23 amendment budget was $30,000, and a lot of that was course repairs and maintenance. So that particular budget line is coming down to $5 grand, and it's more appropriately budgeted on the equipment.
And I know you covered this, and my next question is also on that page, the medical insurance. I mean, I know you talked about the 12% increase, but this is significantly higher than that. Is there an explanation?
So, other than the general 12% increase in the cost of medical, once we come to agreement with our brokers on what we should be budgeting, then there is a process whereby the medical is budgeted by employee, depending on what type of plan they select. So the line 961255 IS medical insurance is really driven by the employees within the Parks Department, what medical product those employees purchase as their health plan. See medical for retirees, so that's somewhere else. So this particular increase, while dramatic, is reflective of the actual staff in parks and the actual health plans being purchased.
Thank you. And then just a couple revenue questions and then one personnel question, I'll be done. On page 703, the total fund balance decreases from 51,000 down to 8,400.
The very top line, Mr. Chairman, is our use of our reserve for bonded debt. Reserve for bonded debt is leftover bond proceeds for a particular capital fund. Those dollars are transferred to a budget reserve, and by law can only be used for that particular capital project's future debt service. If there is no more future debt service on that specific capital project, is to be used for other capital project debt service.
Thank you. And then on that same page, why is the CWSSI line being eliminated?
That was the revenue from New York State. pursuant to our shared services agreement with other municipalities, so that's one-time funding.
Okay, and then through the chair on page 706, and I know you talked about it a little bit in your presentation, but we have a pretty substantial increase in the hotel revenue. Or do you have a best guess on it? We're just not selling that many more hotel rooms, or?
We do, so we do project out growth in hotel tax revenue from year to year. Particular to the Seneca Park Zoo. My goal is to have hotel tax fund Seneca Park Zoo at least to the extent prior to the pandemic. And number just flew out of my head. I wanted to say it's $1.5 million, but now I'm not sure about that. But it's gonna take a couple years to get back there. But this is one more step towards that.
I appreciate that. And then my final question is, on page 731, we're adding a assistant park supervisor position, group 10. And somebody explain that.
Through the chair, that position is the supervisor of the mobile construction crew, a dedicated crew which moves park to park, assisting park supervisors with heavy equipment and special projects within the department. That position also came into this budget while defunding a working form position.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Mr. Franklin, for all your assistance tonight. It's much appreciated. And I yield.
Further questions? Let's go to the citizens.
Thank you. Really new to the administration. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Franklin for his presentation this evening. It's been a long week. Many of my questions were specific to the Seneca Park Zoo and Robot Center. I'm satisfied. I'll continue to dig in if I have any questions. I do have a question about appropriations, specifically authorized agencies. On page 97 and 98, you list out a list, there's a list of authorized agencies. How are these particular agencies?
Mr. Chairman, the authorized agencies on page 97 have historically been called out as receiving optional appropriation funding from this legislature. I will say, in my experience, which in this role only goes back 10 years, once you make it as a called out agency, you don't come off this list unless you commit some major crime, right? I will say, for example, with respect to Lollipop Farm, because that's a new entity on this list. Lollipop Farm is the designated SPCA for Monroe County. Counties only get one Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Lollipop Farm is it. They're also it for several other counties. But they have significant law enforcement presence. They have a significant law enforcement presence in Monroe County and respond to a number of animal abuse and neglect calls themselves and in support of other local law enforcement agencies. So that's an example where there was a service being provided. It was collaborative with multiple agencies. And there was an interest of getting that service recognized. And Lollipop Farm used to get revenue from Monroe County throughout history, but that really ended as an authorized agency in, I think, 2000. They received funding in 2001, but it shifted from authorized agencies to a contract with public safety because of the connection to law enforcement. After 2001, it just dropped off because of Monroe County's financial pressures.
I think your presentation, you talked about 25% increase. Can you explain?
Yes, and it's rounded, okay? Just basically, I looked at the prior allocation to authorized agencies. Added 25%, rounded it off to an even $1,000. That really is just in recognition that our hotel tax revenue is increasing. Most of the authorized agencies on this page have received flat funding for over a decade. So if the county is collecting additional tax revenues, and at least through this proposed budget book, we've added the entities that we sought to add. It seemed to make sense to start increasing historical allocations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great pride, I want to drill through you, Madam, or Mr. Chairman. A little bit more on the law enforcement role played by Raleigh. Can the administration share the size of Lollipop Farms approximately law enforcement budget?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do know that in round numbers, the specific law enforcement budget at Lollipop Farm is in the ballpark of $700,000 annually. And I believe it supports, I'm gonna get the number wrong. I think it supports 8 law enforcement officers. Their supplies, their training, their vehicles. If you look at, although that's the direct cost, $700,000. If you add in the ancillary cost, it's closer to like $3 million. But that includes ancillary costs like in Gates, there was a hoarding situation. They took in, I think, over 200 cats, right? So that was a major cost to Lollipop Farm.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for that detailed answer. Does Lollipop Farm receive any money from government, other than this relatively small, relative to their role, contribution that we are now making in the budget?
I do know from their annual reports that they do not receive government funding. As I said, Monroe County used to fund them more money than this, prior to 2001. From 2001 up until, well, the budget hasn't passed yet, right? But from 2002 up until this proposal for 24, they've not received government funding, and I don't think they received government funding from any counties.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think the ROI on this money is phenomenal. I'd like to speak to, as much as we can, please, the impact of the Iceplex, for which the county has significant responsibility on the hotel occupancy tax. I know it's one of the larger tourist attractions in terms of bringing in out of town overnight hotel guests. Do we have specific numbers or ballpark numbers on the impact of the Iceplex in terms of hotel stays?
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the Iceplex on the grounds of Monroe Community College?
Correct. They changed the name of it. I think it's Tim Hortons Iceplex. That's the one, through you, Mr. Chair, apologies, that's the one to which I refer.
So other than owning the land that the Iceplex sits on, Monroe County really does not have a financial stake, whether capital related or operating related, in the Iceplex. That is solely an agreement worked out between the community college and the operators of the Iceplex. And I think it has changed to Morton's now.
And to correct my comment, through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm referring to the governance of it, not the funding of it. I think the governance does involve the county, but more importantly, for purposes of this discussion, do we have any, numbers? On the impact of the, patrons to this facility where we own the land?
Monroe County does not have that information. I would hazard a guess that Mr. Rochester may have it.
Fair enough. For you, Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate my earlier remarks, thanking, Chief Financial Officer Franklin, both for his expertise and his proficiency, but most of all, for his patience. I yield.
Mr. Hebert, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one quick question. First, I'd like to congratulate Legislator Baines on his 150 years of direct assistance.
Gonna miss your sense of humor, like.
Yeah, I like Ernie. Moving right along, through you, Mr. Chairman, the unfair question, really to, Mr. Gooch. I was disappointed to see that the Innovation Playground that Legislator Yelphoffer and I took you to a couple weeks ago, was not in the budget. Kidding, of course, but could you give us a quick update on where you might stand with that thought? Has it gone anywhere outside of the two of you that are sitting there next to each other, blushing at the moment?
Through the chair, anytime that an opportunity comes before the Parks Department, with more parkland that the county residents can enjoy, we always take that seriously and look at it closely. Typically, these things take a lot of time to come together. This was brought to our attention middle of last week. We believe at the moment that putting something in the budget this soon without really working through the process and getting some additional feedback and looking at this property closer, we just feel like it's a little bit rushed. There are some opportunities that we have already within the county park system, particularly Grease Canal Park, where we are planning a smaller inclusive playground, that if we invested more in that one, we could have something, a little larger size, and also have parking and restrooms readily available already. So that was another part of the proposal that we looked at last week that it didn't include was the bathroom facility and parking. So, I think we'd be happy to continue to discuss it later on in the future, but to try to do something this quick for us just seems a little rushed for us.
And I absolutely appreciate that. Appreciate you two coming up. Just wanted to put the update list. And I too, like Mr. Baines, would like to thank Mr. Franklin, who continuously amazes me with detailed knowledge of the budget and his ability to read his notes in his book, because he prepares for this like you wouldn't believe. It's been a pleasure working with you for many years.
Through the chair, the project at the Roger Robach Community Center, the downstairs project, the renovation of the restrooms, that project has been completed. That was completed at the beginning of the swimming season. The HVAC project, which brings air conditioning to the second story, the significant lead time for the unit itself, that was set just within the last several weeks. Ultimately, we will be operational for 2024. and the windows and doors, the replacement project for the vast majority of the windows and doors throughout the facility. Again, a significant lead time for those materials, the windows and doors themselves. However, we have begun to receive the shipments of those pieces. We've not yet received a construction timeline from the contractor yet, but are happy to see that the long lead items, the physical windows and doors are arriving on scene. Through the chair? No, sir. Through the chair, with this honorable body's approval of that, we'll likely start an expression of interest to solicit design firms that will really take the county through that master planning process. That appears, right now, by second quarter of next year, we'll have that design firm onboarded to be able to start moving through that master planning process for the 70 acres that the county just accepted.
Budget, regarding golf services, you had an employee as a group 17. Now, is that employee an employee of the county, or is that a contractual person that you put into there?
That employee is a county employee that you're referring to, sir, through the chair.
All 3 golf courses.
The superintendent, through the chair, the superintendent of parks and golf courses, the group 20 on page 731, oversees all 3 of the golf courses. The group 17 golf services manager oversees the pro shops within each of the 3 golf courses, speaking with the pro shop employees that are running each one, and himself also working with customers in that customer service capacity. So hopefully that answers your question on his specific tasks and duties.
I couldn't hear you the last
Hopefully that answers your specific questions regarding his duties.
part of it. I hear.
He oversees the employees, the direct 3 employees that are working the registers at each one of our golf courses. Through the chair, those are all county employees that are performing those services.
Not contractual through the. Back to, functional, it's an operating restaurant, things like that.
Through the chair, are you referring to Jack's Place at Durand Eastman? So that is a lodge which is rented to any county patron that would like to rent it out for any one of their functions. So not a restaurant, no, sir.
Item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have the October 24th, 2023 minutes. Okay. Other matters, the November 27th, 2023 meeting of the Recreation Education Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Recreation Education Committee will be announced. Thank you.